Today on the Nerdy Gritty, in the wake of The Last of Us Part 2, we ask if black and white morality should make a return.
One more world disappears inside it. Just another hopeless addict. World that makes a man instead. If the drums don't get you, the guitars will.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nerdy Gritty, where we delve deep into the details of pop culture. I am the Firefly Fox.
I am the Grim Dez. I'm no longer I'm the grim reboot of Dez.
The Grim. Oh, man. Okay, there are now 100 Pokemon manholes in Japan.
What?
Manhole covers. And they're really cool looking. I like the artwork, and I intend on going to Japan at my wife at some point. And I'm not going to travel all around trying to find all of them, but I will find the ones that were close by.
At least one, yeah.
Just because I can. But I like the idea, and it makes sense to me because, Pokemon in Japan are, obviously very... Pokemon's, the major Japan, IP of the last 30 years, 40 years, I would say. It's just this iconic identifying thing of Japan. So here's the question I'm going to ask us. What would America's manhole cover search look like?
It would just be food on every single one.
That was literally the very first one that I was going to go with, especially in New York. And obviously you can go the stereotypical, hamburgers and fried foods and whatever. But I feel like New York is the most melting pot of the world. And so you could just have different things. I think flags would be an easy one. I think in New York, you're going to want to pursue some kind of diversity.
Because Ellis Island is
idea.
Right there. And so there's a lot of history.
I mean, diversity is prevalent in the entire country, of course. But New York is United Nations, Ellis Island, neighborhoods that have... So I think flags would be a fun one. Different countries' flags. I would like to do that.
You know what I would really, really appreciate in the American South, most of the Southwest region?
Yeah.
If there were manhole covers on what year that became America and it was Mexico before that, so that when white people say, go back to your country, you can point to a manhole and say, this was mine first.
This was mine.
Yeah, we lived here.
You stole it from me. Go back to yours.
You bought it from us.
Yeah, it's true. You bought it.
Yeah, come on, guys. In Florida, every manhole could have a news article.
Yeah, a headline for
ridiculous.
Florida man.
Headline. There you go.
A Florida man headline.
Yes,
that's cool. Or just an alligator eating something different.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah,
terrifying. Yeah. What about LA? What would something in LA be?
I'm telling you right now.
They already have the Star Walk. But...
Everything in Southern California would be not Northern. It would just be anti-Northern California, and everything in Northern California would just be anti-Southern California.
They are two different states combined,
and they hate each other.
So in the South, it's here were pine trees, but they're raised to the ground in this picture. Here's a beautiful, pristine river. We're gonna pollute that one.
No, this is just terrible.
Our river is a dried up canal in Los Angeles.
It's the Bay Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah. It's just in shambles.
Godzilla destroying it.
That would be wonderful.
San Francisco, that'd be a good one. Is kaiju.
Yes.
That'd be very Japanese, but
right. But still, it would be awesome.
That bridge shows up in so many big movies.
Man, in Arizona, I do think it would be cool to have wanted posters,
classic
Old West wanted posters.
Cowboys and
just famous cowboys that lived or came through Arizona.
Wyatt Earp and all that jazz.
Well, he wasn't an outlaw, but
sure, it could be anybody. Just pictures of people. I think back to LA. I think classic movies would be a cool one.
Oh, yeah.
This is basically taking the quarters thing where they put the states on the quarters for funsies. Yeah. Just put it on the manholes. But I think, classic movies would be a cool one. I don't know why. I think it's the completionist in me. That's just I want this and I want it. I want them to put 100 of them in on Manhattan Island and then go to New York and drag Faith around. And we're finding all of them. Deal with it.
And then in Delaware, you could have manhole covers.
They say they say Delaware on them.
State of Delaware.
Submit ideas to
Bodie McBoatface.
Manhole McManhole face. Manny McHoleface.
Okay, let's get on with this.
Yeah. Quick update.
Yeah,
I'm
we
gonna let
do
you
wanna
take this
give a
one. Quick
update
update.
here.
I don't
Because
have
last
this.
week we talked about the U.S. Army and Twitch situation.
Yeah.
Literally hours after we recorded that, an article peeked up, and it's gone more. But I've got the article from the one that was hours after we
that we were
recorded
like,
it.
welp.
The U.S. Army is back on Twitch, and it's not going well for them. I'm going to summarize here.
Yeah.
Bottom line is that the U.S. Army is, in fact, back on Twitch, and it turns out nobody has stated anything publicly, but it's become pretty clear that they have decided, yes, we should not be able to remove, delete comments or anything like that.
Right.
The First Amendment thing is going to hold up, so we're
Sure.
not even going to try. And it has become a crap show.
Yeah.
Everybody just wants to talk about war crimes.
It's the free hand of the market here.
Yes. Oh man, and it is, to me, this is always the way I feel things like this should go, that instead of the government having to come in or legal things having to come in and stick a flag in it and say, no, you can't, yes, you can, the people just step up and say, no,
Yeah.
we don't want your garbage. Absolutely not.
I think in this instance, that's very true.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
this is
That's an
really
easily, that people aren't going to like it. Twitch is not going to be nice to you.
cool. Yeah.
Like if you're venturing out onto the unknown in the internet, you better expect all the vitriol that you receive.
Chances are some impressionable young man or woman that goes on to that is going to be far more impacted by the comment section than by your stream.
Right.
So I think that I would not be surprised if the U.S. Army on Twitch either changes drastically or steps back.
Just
all the way.
just kind of stops. Yeah.
All right. What kind of news stuff
Let's
you
get
got
into
going on there,
actual
Fox?
news here.
You know of the Reynolds Ryan
Oh,
Reynolds.
I was like, no. What did
Who
you
is
just
this?
say?
You know Ryan Reynolds.
I know. Yeah, man, you bring him up at least every other week.
I think my Google thinks I'm in love with him, and it's right. No, just because
What's he doing?
So much.
What's
stuff
he doing
lately.
right now?
He is now starting his own streaming service.
Okay, I didn't see this.
The Ryan Reynolds, its own Mint Mobile Streaming. It is 100% free. Streaming one single movie.
One movie.
The 2003 hit Foolproof. And by hit, I mean it's got a 6.5 user rating and no critical ratings at all.
It wasn't enough for people to even rate. Lego's doing something very cool.
Ooh, what is Lego doing?
They make a lot of cool stuff. They're a cool company, but they're making Braille Lego.
Oh, okay.
Right off the bat, I understand you might be thinking, wait, doesn't all Lego just have the bumps so that
right? That was my
kids
first
can
thought.
use it either way? No, this is not really like building playtime build stuff Lego. It's Lego blocks that have their bumps the little pips specifically arranged.
Okay, into Braille letters
to mimic Braille letters, and then there are the corresponding symbols, letters or punctuation or whatever on the block itself, and it's for like educational purposes.
Interesting.
It's to help kids learn the Braille language with Legos. You can still use them as like stacking, like they don't have the same amount of pips as a regular 2x4 block. Studs.
Pips are inverted. Studs are.
Good to know.
Or the other way. So.
Right. I've played too many Lego games to not realize that. Dang it. So it's super cool. Here's the best part about it. It's launched in 7 countries: Brazil, Denmark, France, Germany, Norway, UK, and the USA. They plan to account for 11 languages across 20 different countries. So
cool.
Different languages that use different symbols or different versions of Braille.
Yeah, if you guys didn't know that, by the way, both Braille and sign language have. There's like American Sign Language.
That's why we have American
Braille.
Sign Language. Yeah.
It's different in different countries.
Is unfortunate, but also it's just how language is.
Yeah, it's language.
People speak different languages. That was super cool about it. The really big part is that it's Lego Braille bricks toolkits will be distributed for free to select institutions, schools, and services catering to the education of children with visual impairment. So it's even free to actual like educational companies, or not companies, but organizations. I mean that's our news.
Yeah,
let's get into what we've been playing or watching or doing.
I finally, now that I've beaten Code Vein, I sat down and I'm like, screw this, I'm beating Evan's Remains in one sitting.
Okay.
And I did. I beat Evan's Remains.
There you go.
And it's going to be uploaded by the time you hear this. It will be on our Patreon, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then probably sometime in early September, it'll move over to our YouTube proper as well.
Cool.
But here's what I will say, man. It is $7. If you like a good, twisty mystery story, and also
known as a twistery,
also just a
TM.
fun puzzle platformer, it's worth every penny.
I, about an hour before we started recording this, finally finished the Crash Insane trilogy.
Oh yeah.
Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy.
Did you also 100% that?
Absolutely not. I refuse. I said from the very beginning on that record from the start of the recording, the first one, I was like, hey, I'm not going to do everything. I'm just going to play these games that I've never played before because they're classics. And overall, I enjoyed it. Mostly because, cool, I checked some games off of the classics, classic platformers from the PlayStation era that I never played. But I won't be playing the fourth one.
No.
I'm sure people will look forward to, people who love Crash Bandicoot. I won't, though. There were certain levels that were so frustrating to me that it kind of soured the whole experience.
As I said last week, I have started over the Inheritance Cycle, the Aragon books, and I just finished Eldest, the second book.
Okay.
And I need Briesinger. I own 1, 2, and 4. I don't own Briesinger. Anyway, man, I had forgotten the moment in Eldest that is, again, it's a moment that's really cool when you read it, but in light of recent times, it was really, really poignant. There is a race of creatures called the Urgles, and they have always been perceived as the bad guys, and they had been working with the Empire for a long time, the bad guys for a long time, and then a big war happened, and then the war ended, or a big battle happened, the battle ended, and then second battle's coming around, and Urgles show up, and everyone's like, get out of here, you filth, you're monsters, you're murderers, you do everything, and they come up and they basically say, hey, we were heavily manipulated by the Empire. The way that they've set up their systems and whatnot has oppressed us for a long time, so you know us as thieves and murderers because for us to survive, we've had to go in and steal and kill.
Yeah.
We also want this to change.
Right.
So we want to fight with you.
Yeah.
And it was this really, really cool moment of the main character for a while is like, no, I hate you. You're murderers. And they have to go through like this process of him. He's able to probe minds, like a mind probe, and going into some of the history and the background of the race, and him realizing like, dang, there's just people that want to survive.
Yeah.
Like these are just people trying to live. And it was a really good moment. This book, it dances a line of moral neutrality and good versus evil really well, because there is very much a good versus evil. There are the good guys and the bad guys. It is black and white.
Sure.
But the process that each group has to go through to be able to win this battle, it never ever makes war a glorious thing.
Right.
It never ever makes battle and killing amazing or incredible or fun. It's always difficult and hard and heartbreaking. And they talk about how sick he feels when he kills people.
On the opposite end, I watched a movie called Suspiria.
Okay.
Which I watched the new version of it. It's the remake, the reimagining, essentially, of so there's a film genre called giallo. The plot of the movie is a girl, she gets into a famous dance academy that in Germany, in Berlin, and finds that this is actually a front for a coven of witches.
Oh.
That are using the dances they create to cast spells. And it's such a cool concept. That's a cool idea, because there's a lot of cool modern dance scenes in it, and really like interest, like 50 Shades of Grey main actress, I forget her name, she's the main character, and like learned ballet for like 2 years before actually filming this movie, and like there's really great dance scenes and stuff. It's very dark, it's very violent. It's not at all a good time movie, but as far as like I really enjoyed it because it was impressively written, and based on what I know about the original movie, which I've never actually seen but have read the plot and watched reviews and stuff, it's actually kind of, to me, the perfect remake, where it's taking the very basic bones of a story, the idea of a coven of witches in a dance academy in Cold War Berlin, but not entirely changing the tone, but changing kind of really the plot, as well as the, characters to a certain extent. And like, it's really interesting filmmaking.
I have started the Justice graphic novel series again.
Oh, nice.
By Alex Ross is the
artist, yeah.
And then
I don't know. I want to say Mark
it.
Wade, but that's Kingdom Come, and I just read that.
And I wanted to say Jeff Johns, but I think that's just because we did
I don't
Justice
think it's
League.
either one.
But anyway, it's very good. The art is incredible. Alex Ross's hand-painted stuff.
Anytime Alex Ross paints or does the art for something, buy it.
Yes, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It is incredible. But the story is really interesting because it begins with the premise of the villains of the world saying, wait a second, why have we never stood up and just decided... Jim Kruger. All right.
Oh, it was also written by Alex Ross.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Good job, Alex Ross. But the villains of the world standing up and saying, why have we never just stood up and used our superpowers to save the world?
Right.
Not to help the world or to protect the world, to literally just fix all the world's problems.
Yeah.
And
the Legion of Doom, essentially.
Yeah. So their whole premise is we've built these cities in these pods, these giant cities that we're going to send into space, and they're going to be utopias, and we're going to leave the superheroes behind, and we're going to forget about them. And meanwhile, they are also capturing all the superheroes and trying to like make sure that they can't interfere with this at all or figure anything out. And there is definitely a deeper part to this, a mystery to this as well. And
you don't want to get too into it.
Right. It's real good.
I really love the concept of, hey, like what they start doing good things. So specifically like Toyman starts making prosthetics for children and people who need them, or like Captain Cold goes into the desert and creates an oasis with a mountain of ice,
right?
And things like that. And you're like,
Captain Cold and Poison Ivy work together.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's really fun. And they use that. It's just like, hey, hey, people of Earth, why haven't the Justice League ever done this?
Yeah,
they could. That's all I've got. I've been up to a lot of stuff weird. Let's get into real quick here. We're going to talk about it more in our thing to a greater depth, but we finished Last of Us 2.
Right. Last of Us Part 2.
Just quick overview, because we're not really going to be doing a review in the nerdy gritty. We're going to be talking about it as like a concept and its new morality. But overall, I'll just say it was incredible.
It was a very, very good
incredible game. It is, the older I get, the less I care about Game of the Year, like really needing to rank them. It is one of my favorites of the year so far. Maybe my favorite. I think it had very minor flaws of not pacing, but length. I think it could have been shaved down a little bit, but also very minor because I still enjoyed the entire thing and probably going to play it again on my own.
I would actually compliment it on its pacing, because just around the time that you started to feel kind of bored with the combat and things like that, that's when something kind of extreme would happen.
I'll give you that.
There were a couple of times that I was like, wow, we're still in combat. All right, there's a new area here. But I think
that's exactly what I mean. It's just like, oh, okay, we're still doing this.
Right. But I think that was pretty rare. It did happen. It was pretty rare. But overall, they brought a lot of heat with every cutscene and
incredible game.
And
just the acting and the thematic like connections back to the first one, and so good.
So good.
Someday maybe we should just do a video or something about our the thoughts we have. You can learn a little bit about it, but we want to we have an idea for a sequel.
Beginning of end of August 31st, I think, will be the day that our very last episode, because we finished it. Yeah. The very last episode, I believe, goes up on August 31st, and that same day, a video release of just some B-reel footage of us playing the game.
Our thoughts,
But then the audio is our thoughts that we talk about during the credits.
Yeah.
So during the credits of the game, we always talk about our thoughts, but we had a lot to say about Last of Us Part 2, so we made just a short video of just our thoughts on Last of Us Part 2. Yeah. You can go check that out.
So as of this coming out, that'll be at the end of this week.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Ready to get down to the nerdy gritty?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey, before we do that, we want to let you guys know that if you're hearing this right now, it means that you're listening to a shortened version of the Nerdy Gritty podcast. The first chunk of it, I would say in reality, the first half of it is us talking about what we've been up to, some news articles, things like that. Now, the second part of it, second half of it, the actual nerdy gritty, us discussing the topic itself, is never shortened and never cut down. But if you enjoy hearing our thoughts on games, our thoughts on books we're reading, on movies we watch, on shows that we watch, if you want to hear those thoughts on the random things that we've done throughout the week, we have an extended version that we call the Director's Cuts over on our Patreon. We would love for you to check out patreon.com/dezandfox. And at our second tier, you get access to the Director's Cut of the Nerdy Gritty, as well as a wealth of other things like our Discord, our Patreon exclusive content, and all kinds of things like that. As I said before, Evans Remains is going to be a Patreon exclusive for a while. We have a playlist that we call the Bargain Bin that's still Patreon exclusive. A lot of great stuff that is on Patreon. You get a lot of early access to our things, and yeah, it's really great. So we appreciate your support in any way that you can give it, even if it's just telling people about it. We don't pay to advertise, so your voice means a lot to us. But if it is plausible and possible for you, it would mean the world to us if you were to go over and support us on patreon.com/dezandfox. All right, now let's actually get down to that nerdy gritty.
So as we mentioned before, we finally finished The Last of Us Part 2. Took us a little while. It's a much longer game than we expected. But as we said, it's incredibly good. Enjoyed playing it all the way through. It was emotionally heavy.
Whew.
It was rough to play, but in a way that's you're still engaged the entire time. And one of the big things that really makes it so great, in my opinion, is that the morality of what happens is never reduced to a simple, this person is right, this person is wrong,
right,
this action is right, this action is wrong. They go to painstaking lengths to get you invested in everybody in the game, including the one that you could very easily point at to be the villain, Abby. Here minor spoilers.
I mean, villain is probably not even a great...
Right. You could point at her as that.
We will probably have more than minor spoilers.
We'll probably get into pretty heavy spoilers here.
So
let's
just
get out
warning,
there
there
first.
will be spoilers for Last of Us Part 2.
I would still say, even if you know the story, it's still worth playing, because somebody talking about the story is not the same as experiencing it. But yes, we will get into spoilers here. After or while we were playing it, an article was written, put up on a Polygon, by Ki-Hoon Chan.
You found it?
Chan?
Oh, good. I was looking for it right now.
I've got it right here. I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly. I'm sorry if I did not. But where the author essentially makes an argument that games would benefit from a stronger sense of black and white morality. And when I first saw that, I was like, that's a clickbait title,
right?
Because obviously you don't want the simplicity. Like, good stories always have nuance, right? And we'll get into some of the points that this author makes in here, but essentially the idea is that sometimes you need that, like, really easily point outable, this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing, because that can anchor you in a morally gray universe,
right? Or
also, sometimes you need that. Sometimes it's a catharsis. Sometimes it's an ideal.
You just want to feel like a hero.
You know, it might not be the most realistic thing, but it's something that you need sometimes. You want that, just maybe even fantasy of, hey, this person's doing the right thing, that person's the evil bad guy, we're going to take him down. And so what we want to talk about, kind of using The Last of Us Part 2 as a jumping off point, is the idea of morality in games and how good or bad this kind of trend toward morally gray worlds and stories has been. So I'm going to throw it to you. Kind of, what's your take on this whole thing? I'm still kind of working through it myself.
So personally, as I thought about this a lot, I realized that this is kind of becoming a trend these days in media of all sorts, movies, books, video games, things like that.
Sure.
And as trends tend to go, there does seem to be escalation and into how much we can get empathizing for both sides. And I think that Last of Us Part 2 is a very good example of that, in which you play almost half and half of the two
Very
si-
nearly.
Yeah, very nearly half and half of Ellie and Abby, the two sides of this conflict. And you get a very good idea as to each of their motivations. If there was a game made of Ellie and she was trying to get revenge and you played as her the whole time, that would feel like a good versus evil
It'd
thing.
feel like a very different story.
If there was Abby and you got exactly her story and it felt like she was trying to get her
You
revenge,
understood her motivation.
you would, yeah, and both of them, but then they're pitted against each other, and it made it really difficult and really, really hard. And I think that is a good story to tell in video games, especially because there are things that you would say things like, I don't want to do this, because there is agency
multiple times.
Yeah.
Especially in the fight between them.
It
was just like, I don't want to be either of them.
Right.
Let this be a cutscene so I don't have to make a choice.
But that's exactly why they do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I didn't technically make a choice, but
there's an agency to it when you are active in it.
It's not fun.
No, it's not fun at all. And that's exactly what I was going to say here, though, is I think that it becoming a trend is not the direction that we should go, though. I think that games communicate art in a lot of different ways, but we're in a point right now where video games are still kind of fighting for footing in art and in mainstream media. And fun is something that, and I'm going to say this, and already I'm debating myself.
Sure.
But like, fun is something that we should probably spend a little more time on. Now, I say that, I'm like, yeah, but Nintendo exists, and that's all of their games. There's a crap ton of fun games out there, but our AAA games, our huge AAA games like the Call of Duties, God of War, Last of Us, these games bring a lot of moral neutrality to them, and they're the ones that we tout around as art. But some of the best art ever, like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, are very black
those
and
paragons
white
of those
morals.
genres.
Yes, like clear black and white there. You can make very, very black and white stories that are incredible artistic pieces. And maybe that's exactly what
I was going to bring that up. I had like Star Wars. I put Fury Road on there.
Yes.
One of the best movies in the last 10 years. It's very clear that Furiosa is the good person.
Right.
And, Mad Max is a little more of a neutral storyteller kind of thing. Always fights for the good,
Max
though.
Max
Rockatansky, yes. And Immortan Joe is very clearly the bad guy.
He is the bad guy.
He's the monster in the tower that keeps the maidens locked up, like, and controls the peasants, and like it's very.
And they do it with visuals. Like
they do it visually.
They're all scary looking with pustules and deformities,
right?
And not to say,
if you have deformities, you're a monster and an evil villain. That's what you just said, Des. You're canceled. No, it's very clearly that does not make that movie any less bad, though.
No, the movie's incredible.
Sometimes I don't need to know, or I know the motivation of the bad guy, and it makes them a bad guy. Like I know he was motivated by power. He's a bad guy. Like So that's the thing. I was gonna morality. What did I write? Morality is not the part that determines really good writing. Like. Whether or not it's, somebody's doing good or somebody's doing bad, it's really about motivation. That's really important there oftentimes, because that's what determines, I think, better writing. So, I mean, this is the classic example, but it's Magneto versus Professor X.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you understand they both essentially have the same motivation, kind of. But Professor X, especially, I mean, a lot of people don't like the intro to the first X-Men movie where it shows young Magneto. It basically his power manifesting in the Holocaust, and it's like, oh, I thought this was a fun superhero movie, but I actually love that scene because it gives this character
Magneto so much.
There's a point where in the third X-Men, which was not great, but they say, don't you want your your mark? He's like, somebody put ink on my skin at one point, it'll never happen again, and he has his number from the Holocaust, and it like Magneto is still always the bad guy,
right?
There's still that black and white, essentially. Like we talked about this before before the jump, but like with Aragon, where there's still that black and white of good versus evil. But what makes it more interesting is knowing the motivations of the people behind them. It's very easy to say Magneto's still the bad guy. He wants to kill all humans. But I wouldn't even say his morality is gray at that point. It's just what's motivating him to do that.
Right.
His actions are still evil. you know? So what was done against him was also evil, but that does not justify.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing, like I'm in favor of really good writing.
Yes.
And I don't care, like that can be Last of Us 2 level of everybody's kind of the villain to a certain extent, except for Lev and Yara at the most.
Who, again, I described them in when we were talking during the credits. I wouldn't even say they were good. They were bystanders.
They were bystanders just along for the ride that needed help and actually were more of a vehicle for telling us about who Abby is.
Right.
And making her more gray. So you can have that and still the writing is excellent because you're invested in everybody and know what their motivations are, know what's going on. Or you can have Fury Road and still be invested in everybody and know what's going on. And like, I'll be honest, whenever I watch Fury Road, it's kind of comical, of course, but the moment when it's hard to watch, when the pregnant woman, the pregnant girl, the woman, whatever her name is, I forget, they all have weird names in that movie, and I can never keep them straight. She dies, and it's the child of Immortan Joe, and the child dies, and his huge hulking son with the giant machine gun. Dang it, I can't remember any of their names, but they all have such good names. He's like shooting this giant machine gun out of anger and grief, and even for a split second I'm like, oh, like there's a very split second of like he genuinely is sad
his brother,
that he lost his brother. And so it's just like this very brief moment of, obviously they're the villains, they're obviously the bad guys. That does not make me empathize with them, like or at least want them to succeed. It just kind of fleshes them out to a little bit of greater extent, and that's good writing.
Yes.
You don't have to make everybody neither villain or hero to be a good writer.
Now, here's where again, because I go back and forth in my brain with this type of stuff all the time. Here's where I push back on myself, and what you're saying here, though, is games have this unique ability of, we've already talked about this, agency, where we played through The Last of Us Part 2, and I'd say probably, 20th episode or whatever, I looked to you and I said, I'm glad you're playing this, because then I can say that you did this and I did not. Like, I'm glad that this
I get to be a bystander.
Because at that point, when you are actively doing these things, you feel a lot more. There is a lot more involved in these moments. And at that point, we are actively learning vengeance kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Revenge is bad. This is terrible. I don't want to do this. And it's kind of a life lesson with that as well. Like, yes, you can learn that in a movie or a TV show or a book or a comic, but video games deliver that interactive experience that's unique.
Yeah. I felt like I was Ellie and did not want to do the thing. Like, there's a lot of us saying, like, at the very end, when she learns that there's a lead on where Abby might be, well, both of us are just like, no, stop. Stay home. I don't want, what are you doing right now?
Yep.
And that's good writing. It's not just because, obviously that's the right thing to do. It's because I'm genuinely invested in Ellie and want her to make the right decision here.
Yeah.
Because Dina and JJ are involved, and she's, already facing PTSD, and it's just going to get worse, and like these things. And so that's really great. Another point that this article makes, that I thought was really interesting, was this. We generally don't get too political here, but it makes this example of, so for the example when Donald Trump essentially in some way equivocated the different sides of the white supremacist rally, saying that there were good people on both sides. Mm-hmm. And look, understand, that's a whole thing. People have opinions, whatever. But that's often brought up as a trope in a lot of games.
Yeah.
It's this idea, like, I when I wrote it down here, I called it the Batman problem. It's very frustrating for me a lot of times when he captures the Joker again after he killed 100 people, and then just puts him in and it's talked about a lot in the comics. I just read Kingdom Come, and that's like a central plot point in the past. That's why Superman left, is
Right.
because Magog came in and killed the Joker and provided something for people that they desperately wanted that Superman was unwilling to do. And I get that as like a concept. It's a good like moral concept of like not crossing the line. But at the same time, I think it's often used, and there's that line that you'll hear, "We're not so different, you and I."
Right.
Or, "No, don't kill him, then you'll just be like them. You'll just be like him. What will be the difference between you?" And it's kind of it's a trope in all of media.
Right.
But in video games, it happens a lot. Where, for example, I found a few examples of this. Uncharted 2. At the end, the big villain guy, he drinks whatever sap or whatever and becomes basically inhuman and like immortal essentially. And then like
Right.
when he has the chance to kill him, he says no. He
Not
says,
gonna
"I won't
do
do it," and then allows these like weird creature things to then just murder him so hard.
Or how many people did you kill to get
Exactly.
to that point?
And it's like, what separates that from? It's just like this equivocating of, you know, to use another example from real life right now, it's the equivocating of like anti-fascists against white supremacists. You might disagree with both, but on the very like theoretical, conceptual level, the idea of somebody wanting to hurt somebody because of their skin color and somebody wanting to hurt somebody because they want to hurt somebody with a different skin color, equivocating those is a pretty false choice right there.
Right.
Like, you have to look at motivations, and oftentimes that's used as a way to try to create some kind of morality where it's like, or try to, and it's just, it doesn't work.
And I think you're landing on kind of where I think I'm going to like fit in this
Okay.
whole thing back and forth here, is what it really comes down to is good writing.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to have a morally neutral story, you must be a better than good writer. You must be an incredible writer.
Sure. Yeah.
Because an above reproach writer, to use some biblical terminology there,
Yeah.
because it's difficult to do and not have people poke holes in it or feel lazy. So the Arrow series
Okay.
is one that has a lot of moral neutrality in it. There's a lot of like, you know, the first 2 seasons, he straight up kills. He's
Oh yeah.
murderer.
Yeah. I remember.
He's a straight up murderer, you know?
Yeah.
And then
He's
there's like,
Batman
should
that
I-
also kills people.
But then there's like later in the seasons, they get to this point where he will get to a guy and be like, "I'm not going to become like you. I'm not going to kill you." But then in all of those, you know, combat scenes, he killed 6 people to get to that moment.
Henchmen who aren't the ones.
And it's even more poignant when there's Arrow guy, bow and arrow, but he has allies with guns.
Yeah.
And there are points when they will walk up and like Green Arrow will punch a guy and he'll fall down on one knee, and then buddy behind him will walk up and execution style shoot him in the head. Like, and then they'll get to the quote unquote, you know, big bad, the
Final boss
and be like, "No, we're not going to kill you."
Wait, why not? This is the person that you should, if anybody, like.
And that just really emphasizes that you're trying to go for moral neutrality here, but it's poorly done.
Yeah,
it's lazy
it's not
writing.
Moral neutrality. It's lazy.
It's
a good way to put
lazy writing.
Yeah.
It's poorly done. If you want to have moral neutrality, I think Last of Us Part 2 did it very, very well.
Yes.
And really showed how difficult it is to try and live in a morally neutral world.
Right.
You essentially, that's why people have to have their own morals. That's why you and I would say there is an absolute morality.
Sure.
And that's why there's a lot of things like that, because if you try and live in a morally neutral world, it's rough.
Right.
It means that anybody can do whatever they want, and it's rough.
Right. You can no longer indict anybody for anything.
Right.
Which is a slippery slope argument, but it's what creates that interesting drama and character motivation right there. Because everybody in Last of Us 2, I understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
I understand what they're doing.
Wholeheartedly, yes.
And I agree with very few of the things they're doing, but I understand. And that's what makes it interesting. What I want to talk about now in gaming specifically is, in the past, it's been real bad how they've tried to address more morality.
Yes.
And I don't see as many games this way now, but it's like Mass Effect is the easy one to point out with the Paragon or Renegade. Like, KOTOR's the same way, which are both BioWare games, but they have a lot of games had this.
Yes.
Infamous, where they had just the
BioShock.
Sure, you just do. Yeah. BioShock's a really good one. That game's interesting for even more with like all of what's going on. 'Cause
Yeah.
Would You Kindly comes in at the end. And
It's just a secular humanist utopia.
very interesting.
Yeah.
But I am much more in favor of, and I've always been much more in favor of like strong narrative driven games where I don't have choice.
Right.
I'm fine with choice, but it always becomes a mechanic to me. I'd rather have here's the story of the game. But I just don't ever want to go back to, I said a nice thing and now I got good points, and I said a bad thing and I got bad points. I shot this person and got bad points, and I shot this person and got good points. And it basically, Fable does this.
Yeah.
Which is a weird one to do it on, where it just codifies morality itself, which just turns it into a point system.
Mhm.
And that's not how any world works.
But I mean, I think that's because so many moral deists, where people who would say,
Sure.
you have to be good enough to get to whatever place you think you're going to when you die.
It's on, yeah, it's the tale of The Good Place, the sitcom.
Right. That we live so much of Western culture lives in a morality as a point system.
Yeah. Did I do enough good?
Did I do good enough? Did I not do good enough?
Right.
And we have this lie that we've told ourselves already. And so why would it not be reflected in our games?
Sure. It makes sense. And it makes sense in I like the pursuit in video games for a long time now has been giving the player choice.
Yeah.
And that's a really easy way to say, hey, look, your choices matter. Mass Effect went a little farther, and like down the line, whatever you choose would affect what happens in the story, but it still has this sense of like, you made a choice, and the action, your power in Infamous, the type of power you have directly depends on how your moral choices. So that's a really easy thing to say. And so it's kind of an advertising thing at a certain point. It's like, people like choice. They like to feel like they have agency. And here's a very easy way to point out that, yeah, you do have agency and it affects the gameplay.
I'll even say that in every single game that I have ever played or watched play, a morality system becomes a mechanic, save for one game and one game alone. And this game has and will continue to go down in history for it. Undertale. Undertale had a morality system and you didn't know it.
Right.
They very lightly nudged you at the very beginning of the game, just essentially saying, hey, your choices are going to matter, just so you know. Like, basically, that was it. And then there are 3 paths to take. There's the genocide, kill everybody, and it ends up pretty dark.
Sure.
Then there's the pacifist, and ends up, crazy. Then there's that middle of the ground one where you just get hit at the end with Flowey or whoever else telling you didn't have to kill anybody.
Yeah.
But you chose to save some. Why did you go to this middle of the road?
Why?
Yeah.
Why'd
doing,
you make
man?
who gives you that choice, right to choose who lives?
And it hits you so hard.
Sure.
And it's a phenomenal job with it. And again, the game has and will continue to go down in history.
Toby Fox did a good.
But every other morality system is so stark, it
Yeah.
becomes a mechanic. And so if you want to have a morality system in your game, it needs to be more subtle. Like
don't give me a point system. I like the idea of things changing in the story because of my actions, and that's fairly common at this point, but the point system is so cheesy and undermines what you're trying to say, because it goes back to the Batman problem, I think, of like trying to equivocate.
Mm-hmm.
Or like in Fable, you could burn down a town, or not Fable, but you could murder a family, for example, in some game. This is hypothetical. And, steal everything they own and kill them all. And you lost 50 points on your moral scale, but then you gave money to somebody and now you've gained 50 points back. And it's like, no. You're still going to prison. You are still a monster. Like in real life, if somebody, kills their wife, but then gives to charity, the judge doesn't say, well, unfortunately, actually, that's true sometimes. It's actually no. Wait a minute. This is blowing my mind right now. Our real life justice system is based on
we are
points.
hitting
This is getting real.
An old webcomic you used to watch. I don't think they're doing anything called the Doghouse Diaries, but I'll never forget this. Forever ago, there was a graph that they put on one side. It was how famous you are, and the other side was how people react when you do something bad. And it was an X,
right?
Where the more famous you are up, it's a horrific reaction for the dumbest, simple little things.
Right.
Oh, Like recently, Mariah Carey and Millie Bobby Brown had a picture together. They were standing right next to each other, and they weren't wearing masks. That was it, and everybody's flipping out about it. But then on the other side, a super famous person does something horrific, we want to forgive them so fast,
right?
And it's terrible.
And and even we can get even further into it. That's a classist kind of thing. Racism, gender disparities, things like that. But like in general, at least toward people's moral like opinion of things, you wouldn't say, the Pfizer company, whatever the people who own it, or what, I forget what their names are, but you could donate a wing to an art museum, doesn't mean we're going to forgive you for, opiate addictions.
Right,
like things
right.
like that's just such a lame and non-real, like unrealistic way to talk about morality. It's lazy.
It is. And so even though we have this in the real world, I think it's the responsibility of artists to make sure that we subvert that trope and point it out for being bad.
Sure.
Like, yes, we have that in the real world, but it's bad that we have that in the real world.
Yeah.
That this guy did something terrible, but he's rich and he donated a bunch of money somewhere, so let's forgive him.
Right.
No, like those two things can be mutually exclusive. He can have done something terrible and have donated this.
Yeah.
That's very good that he donated that.
Great.
He also did something terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, go to jail for your crime. And so I think it's a responsibility of artists to kind of point the finger at that, or just to subvert that entirely.
Sure.
So, I mean, again, I'm going to come back to where I think I'm going to land. Moral neutrality is incredibly hard to write. And if you're going to do it, know that you need to go into this understanding that you have to do this well. It's going to flop.
I'm really interested to see how Watch Dogs Legion kind of addresses this.
I guarantee you it will be bad.
I think I think it's just going to be the next like big game that kind of takes on very modern cultural issues, and I'm really interested to see how the first one was kind of bad, the second one was better.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested to see what how they take it on.
To be clear, I bet the game will be fun.
It'll be fine.
It'll be a fun game, but I think the morality system and it's not really a morality system as much as like the story,
the theme, the tone,
the theme of it, and then the fact that you can recruit anyone.
Sure.
They're going to have to make mechanics out of a lot of things.
It's going to be really
that
interesting.
Are deeper, that deserve more than just a mechanic in a video game.
Yeah.
And so that'll be tough.
Yeah.
But
so we'll see how it goes in the future.
All right, we're getting off topic now. So final thoughts, go.
At the end of the day, morality is going to be something in every single game. And it doesn't have to be incredibly gray. It doesn't have to be neutral to be interesting writing. That can very much be interesting. And I think at the end of the day, what I think kind of separates it is the more personal the story gets, the better a gray tone becomes, better a gray morality becomes. Last of Us Part 2 was incredibly personal.
Yes.
It was about two very specific people
who
are interacting with others.
Fans took it.
But it's very specifically about these two people and what has happened in their past and the people that they love and how they go about quote unquote righting the wrong, or how they react to it.
Right. And
it's really easy to like, that's really gray because again, you can understand their motivations and not be on board, but be along for the ride essentially. And that's really easy to say, but the wider you go, the harder it gets to like make a really interesting morally gray universe, because black and whites do exist.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like the wolves and the Seraphites, you're going to have your own bias, but one of them's going to be the good guy in your brain and one of them's going to be the bad guy. And for me, I think the Seraphites more represented a more evil, a more evil morality.
I agreed.
And obviously the wolves were not perfect and did bad things, but at the end of the day, it's a allies versus Axis like kind of thing, where it's just like, clearly there is a moral discrepancy here and it's easy to point that out. It's just when you get to the more specifics, then it becomes a little easier to point out that gray story and becomes more interesting.
Yeah. I would say that should we get rid of moral neutral games, or do we need to focus more on black and white? No, but I would say that writers should begin and end with their story. I think often right now writers are coming to it, okay, I have a loose idea, but moral neutrality is popular right now, So how do we take this and kind of make it more morally neutral? Or
Interesting.
how do I add an element of moral neutrality to this where if you have a story, tell your story. Now that might be a totally black and white morality story, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. That can be beautiful. That can be fun. There can be so many good things to that.
Spider-Man is a really good example, I think.
Yes, Spider-Man was fantastic.
He's always the good guy.
Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really
good
great.
versus evil
Right.
in that. Very, very
very
clear.
simple.
Yes. And you can make incredible art with that.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Mhm.
But if the story you want to tell actually goes a little bit more of a morally neutral direction, cool.
Right.
But beginning into the story, I think too many people today are wanting to ruffle feathers or be the most edgy or try and
leave you thinking, or like,
yeah, exactly. So
which is fine, but it can be annoying.
it's fine if you have done it well and if that's your point.
Sure.
You're not trying to force that.
Yeah.
So begin and end with your story. That's my thought.
That's good.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you think about moral neutrality in video games and art altogether these days. Let us know what you think about black and white morality. Let us know what you thought of our examples of them.
Let us know what you think about the morality in the game Black and White.
Ooh,
You remember that game?
I do remember that game.
Plays a god.
Yeah, it's date. Ooh, that
It's
one.
as a Marxist, not
A Marxist game.
spore guy, spore, whatever his name is. Anyway,
Thank you for listening. I want to say a huge thank you to Granger for the use of our theme song, All My Friends Have Wi-Fi, and some of my neighbors do too, off the album Dear Sam. They are an incredible band. Go listen to their stuff.
if you're listening to this on like SoundCloud or Spotify or somewhere, you might not know that we have a YouTube channel. A lot of Let's Play on there. We have a few other things, but mostly Let's Play. We play a lot of video games and we put them up there.
Yeah.
Very recently, I think just 2 days ago, as of recording this, my Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, actually the playthrough started.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be going for the next couple weeks. And then I've also been putting up, I have like an Assassin's Creed Origins playthrough I'm putting up there, as well as Odyssey when that comes out, and those will be right around the time that that Valhalla comes out. We have our playthrough together of Last of Us Part 2 that's in the works. That was a surprisingly long one, so it's a pretty long playthrough. Got a lot of stuff going on. We're going to be playing a game here like just after we're done recording called Spiritfarer.
Yeah.
We're very excited. It's an indie game from Thunder Lotus Games about death, but in a very different way.
Very different
Super
way.
pumped to play through it.
Yes.
And it's beautifully hand-drawn artwork. Yeah, there's something on there for you. If you're into games, there is a game that you're going to be interested in watching.
I will let you guys know too that this isn't a confirmed yet.
Oh.
But I am looking to find or borrow or whatever a VR headset.
Oh.
Because one of my favorite game series called The Room, not the movie, the game series that is a bunch of like escape the room type puzzlers, came out with a VR experience recently, and I want so badly to play.
And I
this.
wanna be here while you play it, so I can watch you yarf
just
all
barf
over
everywhere.
Yeah,
Projectile.
I'm gonna wear just a freaking like hazmat suit.
like the front seat of Shamu, SeaWorld type stuff.
Splash zone.
Yeah, Splash Zone. Yes. Thanks again for listening, guys, and always remember that save games, save lives.
See you next week.
My voice sings